Let's bring in NBC's national political reporter, Sahil Kapoor, with a little more on Arizona. The important thing, Sahil, on this is where the outstanding ballots are coming from, with the knowledge that they're all mail-in ballots, and which makes a difference.
It's a unique kind of situation, Shep. So what we have is the late vote that's being counted in states like Nevada and Pennsylvania and North Carolina clearly shows a trend toward Joe Biden, right? Because it's these Democrats who are predominantly voting by mail, voting absentee, and that's why you see that trend. In Arizona, things seem to be working a little bit differently. And I'm citing our NBC colleague, Steve Kornacki, who is an expert in all of this, looked into this very carefully. And his theory of this is that what Arizona is counting now is what he calls the late early vote. In other words, these are absentee ballots that were dropped off at polling locations or drop boxes on Election Day. Think about that for a minute, because it's Republicans who usually vote on Election Day. That's kind of how they're wired. That's how they're primed. Democrats tend to vote early. They vote as soon as possible. In this case, many of them drop their ballots in the mail because of the pandemic. So we don't know precisely where these late early ballots are coming from. They could be more Republican than we realize. That is one of the reasons that NBC News has not called the state of Arizona. Joe Biden still has a considerable lead there, but the fact is those ballots are more Republican than mail ballots tend to be, and that's why you see President Trump closing in Arizona. Let's
pull out to the wider map of Arizona. We've been talking about these numbers, and one of the reasons that this phenomenon is happening, particularly in Arizona, Sahil, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that what happened was the Republicans at the end were concerned about the mail-in process. They were having all these problems with the mail, and they told people there in the Valley of the Sun in Arizona, if just pick it up and drive it in. And so many of those were driven down, and that was Republicans who were doing that in the end. And that's why these late early ballots are going in the direction, according to Steve Kornacki, going into the direction of the president.
That is exactly the theory, Shep. That's why President Trump seems to be doing much better in Arizona in the late vote that's being counted at this stage than in other states, because Arizona is a state out west that is versed in absentee and mail-in voting. It's a different kind of situation than Pennsylvania and Michigan that had very little experience in that. And yes, if you're a Republican, you either want to vote in person or you think Election Day is the day that you want to cast your vote. So you have this absentee ballot. You decide, okay, I'm going to fill this in and hand it in myself. It's Election Day. They get in their cars, they drop it off at a polling location. And these are the ballots that seem to be counted now. Many of them are also Democratic. We just don't know the precise breakdown. And unlike other states where we can very clearly discern that these late ballots are coming in overwhelmingly Democratic, it's a bit of a different situation there in Arizona, Shep.
Sahil, I want to show this board one more time because we've just run the statistics on this. The Arizona board. The president is averaging about 59% in each of the vote drops that comes from the Secretary of State's office. He needs to average about 57% of the roughly 427,000 votes that remain. So he's running slightly ahead of what he needs. Here's the point. If the trend continues in the balloting throughout the rest of the counting in Arizona, the statistics, the data show that the president will win Arizona. We don't know yet because all the votes haven't been counted. The statistics don't always hold up. But just wanted to give you an idea about how this has been going. And then eventually they'll count all the votes and we'll know what they are. Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.